Hey guys, my name is Raw Sky, and today I'm interviewing Eduardo Corassa, and he's a doctor of nutrition. He's been raw vegan for 18 and a half years. He was diabetic, he had a herniated disc, allergies, digestive issues, and he was a gamer, and that led him to smoking and drinking, but now he's a doctor of nutrition. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry for doing like this because here it's quite late. It's almost 9 p.m. So I usually go to sleep at 8 when lights go down, right? Like when the sun goes down. I practice chronobiology. So if I look like sleepy, it's not because the shed is boring, because it's interesting for me, but like I'm chrono adapted to my
Wow.
circadian rhythm, right?
You're really well trained in sleep, and we're just interrupting it. But I'm very grateful for joining me.
My pleasure to share a little bit of what I learned for the last almost 20 years, 2 decades of living in a natural hygiene raw food diet.
That's incredible. So take us back how this started. Where were you at that led you to this raw food and hygienist lifestyle?
I was a sick child, right? I was really sick as a child. I used to play a lot of video games, eat a lot of junk food, sedentary. So I grew up with a lot of symptoms, but people don't realize what their symptoms is. My mom just took me to the doctor and they give me like antibiotics and things like that, and that's it. Don't care about anything else. And then when I was 17, because I used to do really good with computer games. I became one of the best Counter-Strike players in the world. I created the best Brazilian team. We were like fifth in the world. And we started traveling the whole world to compete, like Korea, Sweden, France, United States, a lot of other different countries. And then I started to get sicker than I was, right? Because back in the days when I was 17 and started playing the game, I was lean because I was practicing kickboxing. I was eating rice and beans and meat at home. I wasn't doing much. But then we started to make money. We started to travel the world, and we started like going raving and smoking, drinking, staying late at night, sedentary. I started like eating a lot of junk food because we had money. So I stopped. I went up to almost 100 kilos. I got way fatter. So that led me to have a lot of symptoms, health symptoms, that bothered me. But I wasn't worried about the symptoms actually. I was worried about playing my best game, my best performance, because we were paid to play well. It's like a soccer player, for example. If he doesn't play like the best, he doesn't get well paid. He's taken out of the team, right? So we want always an athlete. We were cyber athletes. We want always to perform as best as we can. And
Mm.
so I started like looking into lifestyle changes, because at the same time I started playing bad, it was the same time I started having like really back pain issues, right? So I connected both and I was like, okay, so if I lost weight, if I stop smoking, if I stop drinking, I'll probably get better with my back, and then I'll play as well as I did before. That was my logic back then. And then I just start like doing the things that I knew it would work. The usual things like eating rice and beans and chicken breast. Drinking some juices, and practicing more exercise, lost weight, stop smoking, stop drinking, and then I could play a lot better, and I felt a lot better, and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm on my path. But I could feel, although I was looking ripped, I was like swimming and lifting for 2 hours per day, like at least 5 times a week. So I was like, yeah,
Mm.
and eating mountains of rice, beans, and chicken breast. I was almost bench pressing 100 kilos. I was pretty strong, and but at the same time, I was feeling sick on the inside. I could feel that I was sick. I was like, no, this can't be it. This it has to be. There's something else. There's more, right? So I kept searching and kept going to a lot of medical doctors. They want to cut my nose to make a surgery. They want to cut my back to make a surgery on my back. They were always all about drugs and surgery. But the drugs didn't make me feel well. And the surgery, I was 22 years of age. I had only 22 years of age. I was going to cut myself. I felt like this, it doesn't make sense. And I look at them, they were fat, sick, obese.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, they don't know what they're talking about, right? I start questioning myself. And then I went also to a nutritionist that she said, like, go easy on cheese and milk because it's allergenics, because you have a lot of allergies. And also go easy on barbecue because it is carcinogenic. She didn't taught me that there's heterocyclic amines and hydrocarbon polyaromatic cyclic amines. Yeah, translating to English, it's a little bit hard. But hidrocarbonetos policíclicos aromáticos, aromatic hydrocarbons, polycyclic hydrocarbons, and aminas heterocyclic amines. That's it. It's the substances, the PRMs, the Maillard reaction, MRPs, the Maillard reaction end products. That means the cooked food toxins. Those ones are actually generated when you barbecue meat. So one of them doesn't form in vegetables, they only form on meats. But still, we know on the scientific literature more than 20, 25 years that barbecues actually increase your risk of cancer. So she knew it, she taught me, and I was like, why is my nutritionist saying go easy on something that causes cancer and allergies? It doesn't make any sense. I start questioning myself because, like, why she doesn't say, like, cut off your diet because that makes you sick. It's like smoking. Okay, you can smoke a few cigarettes per day, but if you smoke 20, you're going to
Yeah.
go lung cancer pretty fast. I was like, no, this can't be it. And then I kept searching by myself because I knew I had to search by myself after going to so many really good health professionals in Brazil, and they didn't know what they were talking about. And then I stumbled upon the raw food diet on the internet. I started looking, Googling it, and I was like, oh my God. I had to stop playing the Counter-Strike like a few months before because I couldn't play anymore at high level, right? So I came back to live with my parents back then. And I remember from this day when I stumbled upon raw foods, like maybe half an hour after reading it, I rushed downstairs and I was like to my mom, "Don't cook food for me because I'm not eating cooked food anymore." And she was like,
You knew
"What?"
instantly.
Instantly, and it has been almost 20 years now, right? I'm going to 18 years and a half. It was December on 4th of December on 2006.
What a
And then
Christmas gift you gave
what a
yourself.
Christmas gift. What a Christmas gift. It was like I knew it. When I look at it, I was trying allopathic medicine, I tried naturopathic medicine like acupuncture, homeopathy, etc. But it didn't make sense and it was not working. But when I tried raw foods for a few days, I was like, oh my God, what I found, like and I never looked back, right? But for sure, I made mistakes. I didn't know the amount of I had to eat, so I got like really, really thin in a couple months, and then I went back to the internet researching because I saw the living food community and I saw the fruitarian community, and I
Yeah.
said like living on only fruits that doesn't make sense. But also I look at the other side and I was like, eating that much grains and sprouting things and dehydrators and dressings and sauces and cheeses and milks and patés and crackers and olive oil and namashoyu and miso, and there was so many industrialized things that I was like, you know I didn't know what path should I take. But eating fruit, it was easier. It was tastier. It was faster. It was like, so I started like eating a lot of fruit, but I didn't have taste for vegetables. So in a couple months, I was like skin and bones, And I went to the internet, I started searching, and then I stumbled upon an article on Douglas Graham. And I
Yep.
went to his website, the 80-10-10 diet. He just released the 80-10-10 diet back then, 2 years, 2 months before. And I was like, at the same time, I just bought it on the internet. When I arrived at my home, it came from the United States, from Amazon. When I arrived to my home, I was like, I devoured the book, like 300 pages or something, in like a day. Like I couldn't stop reading from morning to noon, from morning to afternoon. And when I finished, I was like, oh my, I could feel it. I knew it, that I found what I was looking for. And it has been a long journey. And after that, I did a 24-day water fast, 6 months after starting the diet. And during the water fast, a lot of things happened for sure. But at the end of this fast, I started crying. But like it was my body crying and my mind was something else. It was like I'm a scientific guy. I don't talk about like spiritism, uh, but it was the most spiritual uh, uh, thing that ever happened to me. It was like something out of this world. Nowadays, I think because I could feel the host and uh, like my body and I'm on the host. It was two separate things. Like
Wow.
it was my body crying and I'm outside of my body, but I was inside my body. I couldn't control the feeling of crying. It was completely different than anything that I felt. And nowadays, I think that it's the microbiota talking to our brain, the connection between
Yeah.
microbiota and the brain, and the nervous system through the intestines, as we call the axis.
Yep.
The but and my body was like, I'm asking you to fast since you are 2 years of age. I don't know why this came to my mind, but I could feel it, like it was my body talking, that it wanted to fast for 20 years. I was 22 at the time, right? And at that day, that moment, when I was a little bit before breaking the fast, right, I started crying, etc. And I swear to myself, like, I'm going to dedicate my life to save as many people as I can, because I don't want people to go through the what I did, going through so many. I was a fat kid. I was the allergic kid, always sneezing on class, always like feeling awkward because I was always sick and fat and non-coordinated, going bad on on exams, and I had bad. I went bad. I was terrible at sports and at academics at school. And now it's quite funny because people say like, "Oh, you're so intelligent because I can." I, I have a TED talks. I wrote 10 books. And I'm really such a good athlete nowadays. I Nobody can keep up with me. And like it's funny because back then I used to think that I was bad and fat, but nowadays I just know that I was just putting the wrong fuel in my body. There was no way my body and my mind could function with burgers and fries, right? So it's quite funny what knowledge makes to us, changes our mind, opens the paths, and it is, sorry for the long introduction, but that's
No, but this when you decided to become a nutritionist? Is this after the water fast? Is that when this occurred?
no, that did make me decide to share natural hygiene, to
Okay.
spread the word about natural hygiene. That for sure made me decide to uh, work with this. But I was already in language school because I was going to be. I thought in being a translator because I always spoke English very well without studying it. So I had it was easy for me, right? So. Uh, it took me a couple of years to think like, okay, so I'm going to do nutrition, right? So I started like after 2 years of living the diet, I started writing books. I didn't know how to write books. I didn't know. I was not a nutritionist, but I was studying. I was reading. I was like, avid reader on lifestyle medicine and nutrition. So I went out of college 10 years ago, and college was like 5 years. So it took me 3 years or 4 years to go to college after studying the diet, right?
That's
Starting
amazing.
nutrition. Yeah.
That's what an amazing journey. Every time I hear someone's raw journey, it's incredible. But like it's where somebody comes from and the pain that they suffer. And then the freedom that you have is probably what motivates you, right?
Exactly. It was so much freedom because there was so much pain in my back and in my jaws. I was feeling terrible. I could feel more tired than I was before waking up. It was terrible, terrible, terrible pain. So, and
Yeah.
not just the pain, but the performance, thinking clear, thinking better, learning better, being more coordinated, being healthier. Now, it's almost 20 years without a sore throat, without a runny nose,
Amazing.
without like getting sick, without getting constipated, without feeling bad. Every day you feel like magic. You feel like heaven. You feel like you're a villain. So it's there's no words to describe
There isn't.
how, yeah, how much health is worth it actually.
That's right. I think what people don't realize is not just the disease will go. So we actively seek out back cures and diabetes cures, but you thrive. You literally glow. You think clearly. You get to live your dream life.
Exactly, live your dream life. That's the exactly what, because we all want health. We want to be healthy.
Yeah.
It's our nature. It's by design, right? But we just get caught in this matrix that people live, that is everybody's sick. So you normalize sickness and
Mm-hmm.
you underestimate health, right? But health should be the coolest thing ever. Being healthy, being having good lifestyle habits. We actually should be praising people, but now we praise people that live normal lives, and we think it's awkward and strange. People that want to take care of themselves. We even call orthorexia, right? With somebody try to name
True.
a disease of eating right, like eating wrong and killing yourself is not a disease, but trying to eat right and take care of yourself, it's a disease. It's crazy world that we live in.
It is. It is a crazy world. So when it comes to diet, we can talk about what you eat in a day, but you discovered, obviously, you said that just fruit wasn't right, but also none of the too much of the industrial and like dehydrated and crackers. So do you want to talk about what you eat and why you eat the way you do with raw foods?
For sure. Back then, back in the days, I didn't have any experience whatsoever. So I just followed Doug Graham's advice on 80-10-10. And for sure, it worked like crazy, right? So because I just started eating fresh, whole, ripe, raw, organic plants. Not organic because I didn't have money for that back then. But I just started like eating fresh, real raw foods. No, nothing processed, because most people of the living food movement, like they do a cake with coconut oil, they put agave, xilitol, blah 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 blah, and you look like, okay, so where's the fresh food?
Yeah.
Maybe this is, you can call this raw food, but for me, raw is not just uncooked, but whole. There is
Yeah.
no way you can separate both, because olive oil can be raw for most people if it's cold pressed, but it's not raw, like,
Yes.
because there is food processing on it. So people in the raw food movement should understand raw whole food movement, because whole is maybe
Yeah.
even more important than raw itself. Because if you take a look at Okinawa's, Okinawans live on 70% of their diet sweet potatoes, but they get to 100, 110. They have super centenarians and they have centenarians, and they're cooking their food, but they're not eating refined food. And for sure, I think refining is worse than cooking. But I'm not like trying to make cooking look good, right? I'm not in favor of cooking food, but still, uh, we're most of the raw food movement are looking the wrong ways to try to eat healthier.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. When I healed myself, I'd been sick for 32 years. I had over 60 surgeries, had 7 major organs removed. I was actually had FND and couldn't walk or talk or read at the time. And all I knew was whenever I had something that was cooked or processed, I couldn't get up. And when I ate it, whether it was a carrot, celery, piece of fruit, I ate that. A few nuts and seeds, I could get up. And that's how I discovered it. And I feel like that is such an important principle when somebody looks at the food in their plate, that if you're a raw vegan, predominantly the focus is raw, whole, living, waterful foods. Because I really feel um, it's so crucial. What is crucial about that? What makes that watery whole food so vital versus something that's been processed or even dried?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues to talk about it, right? Because modern science in general and allopathic medicine is too short-sighted. So it just looked to like vitamin A or vitamin C or protein, but that is like such a misrepresentation of what is going on, because we have to look at the influence of the food in our whole physiology. There's changes in microbiota, there's changes on hormones, the endocrine system, there's changes in the metabolic system, there's changes in the epigenetic systems. So there's changes in the repair systems like the sirtuins and enzymes. There's so many changes, or through lifestyle medicine, or through a bad style uh, bad lifestyle, that we have to look at the whole. So, first of all, I would say the loss of nutrients and the formation of the Maillard reaction end products. So, if you take a look at it, we know that these micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals, they control a lot of things in our physiology. So, cooking the food in normal ways, right? Not frying or cooking too long, etc., loses at least 30% in average of the vitamins and minerals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And phytonutrients, etc. So the loss of nutrients, you have less nutrients. So we can talk even about the triad theory from Bruce Ames. He says
Mm-hmm.
that like the when you have less micronutrients, you end up aging faster and developing more chronic disease. It's a long theory, but it's quite beautiful from a famous scientist, right? So we need more nutrients, and cooking food gives us less nutrients, not just because of the cooking process itself, but because of the foods that we eat cooked. Because nobody eats a cooked banana, right? People eat cooked potatoes, for example. And even the Greeks back in 2000 years ago, they used to say that what grows under the ground is
Yeah.
less healthy than what grows above ground. So the fruits and the vegetables, because the roots of the plants reaches way more nutrients and is actually being cooked by the sun. We know that fruits and vegetables has more micronutrients than potatoes or grains, for example. So
Yep.
there's a lot of issues you have to talk about it, right? The loss of nutrients because of the cooking, the loss of nutrients because we're not eating our species specific diet, but also there is the Maillard reaction end products. And these cooked food toxins are actually correlated with every chronic diseases you can think of. For example, you can find AGEs, advanced glycation end products, in cancer tissues. You find them in the brains of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. You found them higher in people with COVID. Like they are diabetogenic, they are pro-atherosclerotic, they are pro-oxidants, they are pro-inflammatory. So there's a lot of things to talk about the Maillard reaction end products, right? I can sum it up like saying they're carcinogenic, mutagenic, teratogenic, clastogenic, pro-inflammatory, gerontotoxins, and cytotoxic, genotoxic. I can translate all the scientific terms, but you can actually understand that they're toxic and they're aging
Yeah.
you faster, right? The higher the myelin reaction end products on your bloodstream, because it's more than 400 substances that are formed during cooking, right? For sure, depending on the type of cooking, depending on the temperature, depends on a lot of factors, but still. And then after the loss of nutrients, after not eating the specific diet, after the myelin reaction end products, that they can actually interfere with the nutrition process itself, we have to talk about it for sure. There is microbiota in the food that we eat.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the fruits and the vegetables, they are not only prebiotic because of the fiber, but they are also probiotic because of there's, like in an apple, there's 100,000 uh, micro microbes in the plant itself. So
Mm-hmm.
when we eat plants, we not just feed the bacteria with the fiber, but we actually eat bacteria. But when we eat raw plants, right? Because these
Yeah.
bacteria are sensible. So when we cook the food, we also are destroying the microbiota of the plant. So for sure, having the right microbiota, because of all these things we talked about, even the phytonutrients in these plants feed the bugs in our intestine. They are actually really important for every part of our physiology. But so the microbiome, and there's other issues like hydration, for example.
Mm.
People don't understand the importance of eating fruits and vegetables because most people are like, nah, I cannot drink 3 liters of water or 4 liters of water. And nowadays, water is so polluted, right? But
Mm.
still, the water in the food is actually a really important part of the process as well. And then um, we have to talk about the water and the lower amount of calories, protein, it actually reduces IGF-1 and mTOR and increases sirtuins, FOXO, and AMPK. That means the macronutrient and calorie profile on our natural foods, the fruits and vegetables,
Yep.
it actually downregulates the mitogenic mechanisms of the body, the the things the body use to grow, to do mitogenesis, as we learn in biology in school, right? The
Mm-hmm.
body focus on when it has too much calories and protein, it raises IGF-1, that is insulin-like growth factor 1, and
Mm-hmm.
mammalian target of rapamycin, two substances that is actually used to grow. Like we call that the nutrient sensing pathways in science, right? There's like
Sure.
our bloodstream can capture when you eat protein and calories, and it sees like a well-fed bloodstream, and it says like to the liver, let's start uh, producing growth hormone. Let's start growing things. And when you eat less calories and less protein, you actually turn on the longevity genes. You actually turn on hormesis. You enter like a resistance repair mode. So that's what science is now showing, that we
Mm.
turn on the repairing mode with less protein and less calories and more phytonutrients. So that's one of the other reasons that fruits and vegetables are good for us, right? That raw foods are good for us, because
Sure.
usually when we natural raw foods, we cannot eat too much protein, we cannot eat too much calories. It's quite hard to do it, right?
Well, it's like bang for your buck, right? Is if your body's spending all this energy to break something down like a pizza, and at the end it's left with like barely any nutrients, it's not happy and it's stressed out, right? If you have something low calorie, which is full of life and hydration and nutrients, the whole body is of course going to work more efficiently.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because I mean, someone can't live off vitamin pills, right? Which are dried, processed, like no water. Um, but the fruits and vegetables are like those vitamin pills. Does that make sense? So a lot of people think that they're deficient in something, so they can just take a whole lot of supplements. But those people don't tend to thrive. You give them fruits and vegetables, and I even see people, if they're getting it wrong, even they still seem to thrive. So there is something very special about those fruits, right?
For sure, for sure. Nutrition is so much more than just food. For example, a good thing that I usually talk to my patients is always like, food is not nutrition. Nutrition is the sum total of all the process of nutrition itself. For example, water is nutrition, sunshine is nutrition, sleep is nutrition. Because, for example, if you don't sleep, you diminish your absorption of nutrients. So people think like, oh, I'm going to eat like an orange, I will have vitamin C, but like, if, for example, oh, I hit it.
We've lost you there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I hit it the table and turned off my camera. So there's a lot of things we must discuss and consider, right?
Yeah,
When we are talking about nutrition, it's not just the food itself. It's
yeah.
not just the
And
nutrient itself.
I think modern medicine we've lost all of that, right? Is you go to them and nobody says, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? How are your relationships? It's usually just a prescription or surgery. And it's so important, what you're saying, like this whole picture.
Exactly, exactly.
So, and what are you eating in a day? And why? Like, why did you
Easy,
pick to eat this way?
easy one. For sure. My diet is based on fruits and vegetables, because fruits and vegetables are anthropoid primates foods. That's the real deal. Most people don't like to be called as animals, or as primates. But if you take a look at, think about it, what is there's only two points of view in human uh, society, right? Or we came from the rib of Adam and Eve, from the Garden of Eden and the Bible, etc. Or we came from a single cell in the ocean that starts to divide, and then became fishes, and then reptiles, and then mammals. And from mammals, there was primates, and from like a really back then primate, it became like a gorilla, and then a chimpanzee, and then the bonobo, and then us.
Yeah.
That's the only way. Like, these animals share 99% of our DNA. In the case of the bonobo, 99.3. Their microbiota profile is exactly identical like ours. They
Wow.
behave, yeah, yeah. They make like microbiota assessments of several different species, the kinds of bacteria, the amounts, every kind, every detail. There's even, for example, there's 0.3 difference, genetic difference from the bonobo to the chimp, and for us also. And also, not just the genetic difference. Our microbiota is more similar to the bonobo from the chimps, right? So for sure, as Jared Diamond, a famous anthropologist, suggests, we are the third chimpanzees. And it's not just we natural hygienists that are suggesting that we are chimpanzees. Like anthropology, primatology, they all suggest we came from primates. We're almost identically to us. So we should be eating a lot more similar to them, right? So I eat fruits and vegetables primarily, but for sure, I don't restrain myself to only fruits and vegetables. I eat lentils or chickpeas, for example. I eat some legumes raw once in a while. I eat rarely I can eat some sprouted grains, like maybe a quinoa or something like that, or buckwheat. Really rare. I eat nuts and seeds more frequently. I may eat algae. I love mushrooms. For example, you know, uh, I use the term sometimes fruitarian, but I'm not a fruitarian. I don't live on only fruit. I eat primarily fruits, right?
Mm. I've seen What I Eat in a Day by you, and I look at someone like you as more fruitarian, where there isn't anything processed. I was fascinated by you were eating lunch and you ate a whole lot of fruit, beautiful looking fruit, and then at the end you had a few nuts and seeds. Is that something you do often? How you eat your fruit and then you'll have a few nuts and seeds to balance it? Is there a purpose to that?
Exactly. For a long, long time, I was like into 80-10-10, right? Not
Yep.
almost eating really, really low amounts every day of uh, fats. Nowadays, I eat a little bit more fat. I don't worry about the details, but for sure, every time I finish lunch nowadays, I like to eat a little bit of nuts and seeds. Not too much, but I easier can maintain my weights eating a little bit of fat every day.
Right. And so do you have breakfast or your first meal is lunch?
My first meal is two coconut waters, right? It's not a meal, it's just a drink, but I just drink a couple of coconut waters and then I go directly to lunch when I'm going to eat like at least 2 kilos of fruit and some nuts and seeds, maybe in the end.
Sure. And then do you have dinner?
Yes, I have dinner usually at 5 to 6 p.m. tops, and it usually consists of a lot of vegetables, and for sure, maybe the other foods that I just talked, right?
Sure. When it comes to vegetables, what sort of vegetables do you have? These are all raw, right?
Oh, mm.
That sleep cycle's calling you.
Sorry.
You're all right.
Uh, yeah, for sure. Once maybe in a year, I can sting a pumpkin when I see it's really good pumpkin and it's cheap. Maybe I'm trying to like interact with a friend or a girlfriend back then. I for sure I have been raw, and I have been maybe going 2 years with only raw. But once in never, I can sting something and I'm not worried about it, right?
Sure.
Uh, because I think nowadays about the whole. In the beginning, I was just trying to heal myself, but nowadays, for sure, steamed pumpkin, you're going to lose nutrients. We wouldn't eat pumpkin raw, really, but still, that is a detail, right?
Sure.
Uh, but sorry, I forgot the question. I'm
Just
actually.
your dinner is what raw vegetables do you eat for dinner?
Oh
What
yeah,
is
yeah,
in
yeah.
the salad?
I love broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, lettuce, tomatoes. It's fruit vegetables and cruciferous vegetables usually, right?
Sure. Sure. So when also with
Celery,
so all of them, all the raw types
all.
of vegetables. Do you ever have a focus on greens, or it's just like a whole lot of whatever you feel like?
Uh, uh, sure.
You're all
That's
right.
the thing. A lot of people make this mistake. They use a lot of carrots and beets, and they think that's enough, right?
Yep.
But it isn't enough. It isn't enough. It is just like we need the macronutrient profile that is in vegetables. So I use some vegetable fruits, but I always make sure I have some greens and have like at least sometimes I just do cucumber noodles with tomatoes, right? But
Yep.
like I always make sure I'm eating a high quantity amounts of leafy greens or cruciferous vegetables.
Okay. I'm going to let you go because I think you need to get to your sleep cycle, and we're all about nutrition, and sleep is nutrition. So,
No worries,
um,
no worries. If you can ask, if you want to ask a little bit more, I'm here.
did want to ask just about protein because you are so knowledgeable on all of this, and everyone and every study that apparently is being promoted is that the body needs protein. That should be a focus. Do you want to explain why that's not as important and that we are getting protein from the foods we eat?
For sure. We can take a look. There's always several different ways to answer that, right? I think one of the main ways is quite simple. We can look at primitive societies, as the Okinawans, for example. They eat, in average, 39 grams of protein per day. And we can look at the Papua Highlanders in the New Guinea, right? Probably somewhat close to you. I think New Guinea is on New Zealand,
Yes.
right? They are quite famous on the scientific literature. They are well studied. It's strongmen that live in the jungles, and still they eat 35 grams of protein per day. If you eat only bananas, and I'm not suggesting that, but if you eat like 3.5 kilos of bananas, you get 35. You get even more than 35 grams of protein a day. So it's quite impressive, but it's really hard to not get enough protein in a whole food diet. It doesn't matter what you're eating, as long as you're eating enough food, you're probably getting protein. But for sure, there's a lot of things we have to consider, right? First of all, as the research suggests, the Papua Highlanders actually adapt to a low protein diet, actually needing less protein to maintain nitrogen balance, as we call. So the body is well adapted to high protein or to low protein. But the science, you can go to Walter Longo, David Sinclair, Mark P. Matson, Luigi Fontana, the main gerontologists in the world, the main guys, the main scientists that study aging, all of them says the same thing, that more protein in lab animals and in humans actually ages you and increases morbidity and mortality, as we talk in science. That means increases the probability of dying and increases the probability of suffering from diseases.
Okay.
So that means if you only eat fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds in 2,000 calories, for example, you are going to get really safe amounts of protein. Not too much, not too little. But for sure, you can make the math, and if you're worried, what I tell my patients is include some legumes like lentils, chickpeas, or peas, and you get more than you need for sure.
Sure. And that's good to know. So if someone wanted to start a raw diet today and they're listening, what would you recommend? How would they look at starting? Where's a good place to start?
For sure, it would be, in my humble opinion, right? I could ask, in my humble opinion, I could say to people to read the Eden's Diet, my first and main book that is already translated and available on Amazon, print on demand, and Kindle. But it's as simple as starting to eating more fresh fruits and vegetables every day, every single meal, right?
Yeah.
Before you think of anything else, you just start eating fruits and vegetables. And then you eat anything else that you want.
I think that's a good place to start, not overwhelm somebody. Just start slowly and see the difference.
Exactly. After you see the difference, there's no turning back, right? You
That's
know in your
right.
heart.
That's right. So, if there's one thing you want people to know who are listening about either your journey or the raw food diet, what would it be?
For sure, I would like to have the knowledge that I have now over the details, because I was too much worried and focused on the diet part, and I was overlooking a little bit of the sleep part, the chronobiology and chrononutrition, some other stuff that is it's also really important.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really love talking to you. You have so much knowledge and education. So go follow and, absorb that, help yourself on your journey. So, yeah, thank you.
My pleasure to help, my pleasure to contribute. And if you guys want, just type Dr. Corassa, raw food nutritionist, and you find the content in English, because the content in Portuguese it's way more easy to find, right? But most people will not understand Portuguese, so go for the English content. My
Well,
pleasure.
maybe
Hope
after
to
we
meet
eat
you.
raw.
Hope to meet you one day over there, over here, or in some
Yes, that
raw
would be
food event.
amazing. That would be amazing. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. Bye.
Bye.